Hello and welcome back, everybody. You are listening to a new interview in my series with women on the autism spectrum. I'm Tanya, your host, and I'm really happy to have you back, and I'm really happy to be back with a new interview. In this series, I have invited women on the autism spectrum to speak about their everyday life struggles, problems, and limitations. Just because autism is invisible, it doesn't mean we don't have problems and limitations. Actually, they are real, and my guests are going to explain to you how it feels. If you like these interviews and if you find them helpful, please consider donating to my fundraiser. There is a link below, just below the video, and your contribution will really make a difference for me so I can make more videos and more interviews. Okay, and if you happen to be a woman on the spectrum, then I would like to get to know you. There is a Calendly link also below the video, and you can sign up and apply to be interviewed. All right, now let's welcome today's guest, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Tanya.
Welcome. And yeah, I'm really happy to have you here today.
Yes, me too. It's really, really good to be here.
Thanks for coming. So, Sophie is from the UK and she lives in the UK also right now. And she helps making autism assessments, counseling, and mentoring. Okay, Sophie, so you told me that it was very hard to get an autism diagnosis because at that time you were in Singapore, abroad, you were living there, and you all of a sudden you found out through a book that you could be on the spectrum. Can you tell us how it came that you realized you were on the spectrum?
Yes. So there are a lot of I would say kind of synchronicities that kind of led me to kind of finding out that I was autistic, and it was quite a long journey. But I think to start off with, my job in Singapore was very demanding. I was a teacher working in a tuition center with a demanding kind of workload, demanding long hours, and having kind of some tricky times with management with my performance and things like that. And that brought on a lot of anxiety. And I've always experienced anxiety, but I think the job in Singapore really exacerbated it. And my partner at the time, we met in Singapore, we lived in Singapore. She noticed some kind of odd things going on with me because of this job that kind of wasn't just generalized anxiety or generalized job stress. So, for example, I would come back from work and lock myself in a dark room and not have any sensory input because I was just so burnt out. And yeah, just had a meltdown really. And I would have these really intense morning routines where, if something went wrong in the plan in the morning, I would have a meltdown essentially and couldn't continue my day. And this kind of built up over a number of months. And I just wanted to find out what was going on because I wasn't satisfied with, the explanation that it was just anxiety and worry. I actually knew that it was something more. So yeah, during my time in Singapore, I was really interested in psychology and mental health because of this kind of meltdown. And yeah, I was in the library and came across this book by Janera Nuremberg called The Divergent Mind. And it was basically a collection of stories about women who were on the autism spectrum or had ADHD and had a later in life diagnosis. And I was reading these real life accounts and just thought, oh my God, like this is me, especially with all the sensory stuff going on. Like this is what I'm experiencing, but I don't have a label or an explanation for it. And there was a really good quote actually in the book about, women are kind of more likely to attribute kind of, their kind of stressors to things like panic attacks and burnout, when actually women who are neurodivergent, it's often the case that it's sensory overwhelm that kind of leads to like looking for an autism assessment. And that was exactly my experience. It was the kind of sensory issues that kind of triggered that search for a diagnosis.
So then you got your diagnosis while still in Singapore?
Yeah. So, I mean, getting a diagnosis was really tough there because, first of all, I'm not from Singapore and I had no way of navigating the kind of healthcare system there, really. It was really confusing. And I remember ringing up a psychologist's office and I asked, oh, so I'm looking for like an adult autism assessment. Do you do them? And the woman on the phone said, okay, so we don't actually specialize in adult autism, or we don't have anyone who's knowledgeable enough. We only kind of specialize in children. And then I rung up another psychologist's office and they just assumed that I was a parent with an autistic child calling for an autism assessment. So it was really hard even getting through that initial like screening call for one. But yeah, luckily I came across somebody who was a British psychologist, just who happened to work in Singapore, who happened to specialize with women, autistic women. And I just felt really comforted by that and, did the assessment with him. But the assessment itself, and I hear this from many autistic women, it's quite overwhelming and, dare I even say, like traumatic experience. Not because it's really intense, but because you have to kind of, as an adult, have to dig up all of your past experiences and tell it to the assessor about some of the things that went wrong in your life and all of the things that caused you harm and anxiety, and you had to just share this with somebody who you've only known for like an hour. And there's a misconception that an autism diagnosis is just like a series of cognitive tasks to like test us, but it's not. It's actually, it's unearthing everything about us and then putting it under the microscope and then pulling out what is wrong, in inverted commas, what is wrong with us, and things that just aren't right and not typical. And I think that was really hard for me to do. And another challenge was, them having to interview my partner at the time and her having to talk about all the things that, I was not good at, and them also having to interview my mum, who to this day does not believe that I'm autistic and essentially was very reluctant to give evidence for this for my diagnosis as well, which was quite upsetting, really.
Yeah, of course. I can imagine that, yeah. And then you obviously did get your diagnosis. And did it come to a surprise? Not really.
Yeah. I'm going to say no, partly because throughout my whole life, I've had this kind of inner knowing that I was different to everyone else, that there was just something different. And even though I didn't know at the time what autism was, from reading books and just kind of having an awareness of some autistic traits, there was something in me that was like, yeah, I'm not really surprised. I think I would have been more surprised if they said, no, you're not autistic. So yeah.
And how has your life changed since you got this diagnosis?
It's changed a lot. Like, it did a complete 180 turn. So because of the diagnosis and me kind of realizing and piecing together all of my experiences, it changed in a way where I knew that I wanted a career that helped autistic women and autistic adults get the diagnosis that they deserve, because there's clearly an issue with us accessing support the assessment and the post-diagnostic support. And number one, it definitely changed my career path, and I'm now an assistant psychologist, and it motivated me to pursue a psychology master's, where I conducted research on women in mid to late diagnosed adulthood. And so, yeah, for one, it changed my career, but also as a person, just to be a lot more, even though it's hard, a lot more self-compassionate for myself and what happened before the diagnosis. Because there was stuff like, me getting fired from jobs and losing friendships and losing relationships, and having that blame being just put on me and my personality, whereas it was due to something. It was due to me being autistic, but also living in a world as an autistic person that just did not accommodate for me. And just, having that self-forgiveness was huge. And I still mess up. I'm still not as compassionate as I want to be for myself, but it's definitely changed that for sure.
Mm. It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
I tend to forget to have compassion with myself also.
Yeah, it's hard when you've had people telling you that you're doing things wrong for most of your life, and then to just forgive yourself. I think it's hard, but it's also, like you said, really beautiful too.
Yes. Do you have a special technique for that?
Oh, it's been trial and error. Journaling really helps me. If I am feeling, because I do get those days where, I do experience struggles, and my brain automatically goes to, oh, it's because you're autistic, or it's because you're this. But when I journal about it, or if I meditate on it, which I'm doing now, it helps to kind of shed light on the fact that, yes, I am autistic, but most of the challenges are because, like I said before, we are living in a world that just doesn't gel with our neurotypes, or some people don't understand what autism is, which is a massive one, and don't know how to properly accommodate me and communicate with me. And I think really journaling and reflecting on that helps massively.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and you already started to talk about limitations and struggles that you experience. Can you name us a few of problems you experienced due to autism?
Oh, quite a few, for sure. But I think some of the limitations and struggles that I experience are mostly due to experiencing autistic meltdowns and autistic burnout. And these things are huge, and it's essentially like a build-up or a manifestation of things throughout the week or throughout the month that trigger me, and it's a build-up, and it explodes into this kind of meltdown or a burnout, which can be quite debilitating for me physically and mentally, and it can affect my day-to-day life and employment and things like that. And it's also a challenge because it's quite scary, and scary for others who have to witness it, and me having to explain to people what these things are. And what I found out is that these kind of meltdowns and burnouts happen because it's a buildup of me not being in tune with my body, and having my needs go under the rug, and me not communicating boundaries, and it just amounting into a big explosion.
Mm, that's true, yeah.
Mm,
It requires a lot of self-awareness, a high amount, really.
it
I would
does.
say much more than any normal person. Mm.
Yeah, it does, because I think often with some autistic people, some of us who haven't done the work or are not able to, or who are newly diagnosed and are just trying to figure it out. A lot of us are not in tune with our bodies, like physically. So what I found out is that before, I couldn't predict when this burnout or meltdown would actually happen, and it would happen where I would just be on the floor crying, not able to eat or drink or talk. And I think if you then do understand your body and become in tune with it, you're able to kind of maybe not prevent it happening every time, but learn how to recover from it and make sure it's not as big as it should be.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's a lot of food for thought. You give me good ideas.
It's an ongoing process, isn't it? It's an ongoing learning
Yeah,
process, and
sure.
it's not going to be right all the time.
And can you name a few other things that you struggle with?
Yes, for me, this is quite a big one actually. It's processing speed. So for me, I can process things either really, really quickly, like information, which is a benefit, but then also I can have really kind of slow processing speed, which can affect conversations with people or completing tasks at work, which was something that was drawn out in many of my jobs, and I had no explanation why. And I would tune in to the minutest kind of detail of a task or a conversation and completely miss the big picture. And even though when talking about it, it does seem quite small, but processing speed affects lots of different aspects of my life. And it can manifest in me, losing friends because it seems like I'm miscommunicated what they were saying, or I couldn't even really tune into the conversation because I was focused on many other different things and not being able to process everything fully. So yeah, processing speed is another one for me. That's a challenge.
Hmm. Anything else?
Um, I'm going to say another thing, but I don't think it's intrinsically because I am autistic. It's going to be stigma and discrimination. And that is a massive challenge for me because I can't control that. It's on other people and their stereotypes and their interpretations of autism, which can be quite harmful for any of us when we encounter that. And it's not something that we can, have an accommodation for. It's something that, yeah, we can't control unless that means, learning ways to kind of ignore it or making sure that we're with the right type of people who might accept us. But stigma filters in through all of our lives and my life all the time. But it's not, yeah, it's not something like executive functioning where I can, learn to organize my time better. It's something that I can't control.
Yeah, and there's trauma
Yeah.
that to be treated in a negative way, to lose the job and to be stigmatized.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. There is still a lot of work to be done, I think, to inform people about autism.
For sure. And it's like the awareness is there of autism, but now it's addressing the stigma because people know about it, but only know about it in a particular subgroup, or they know about it, but not the whole effect of it or the whole impact of it. And you're right, there's such a long way to go.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important for us to just display that, yeah, we do have limitations like everyone else, and autism is not nothing just because the other person cannot see it. Yeah, it's important for me to make it visible. That's why I make these interviews, and especially for women, because women, yeah, women are often ignored when we
Yeah,
say I have this problem. It's psychological. So yeah, that's why, yeah, I think it's important to speak out and to have, yeah, to bring more awareness to the world.
Definitely. And yeah, you beautifully put, for sure.
Thanks. All right. So you told us about some limitations and struggles, and I'm sure that you have some mechanisms to cope with them in everyday life. Can you name a few?
Yes. So these are the things that work for me, but they might not work for everyone. Like we know autism is a huge spectrum. So these things work for me, but might not work for everyone else. But for me, it's practicing yoga. And there's a particular form of yoga that I have found really helpful. It's called Somatic Yoga. And essentially, it's yoga that helps you process any kind of hidden trauma in your body and to kind of let it out and to be really in tune with your body and your bodily needs. And for me, being autistic is so much to do with my body as well as my brain. And somatic yoga really helps with sensory issues and just making me aware that, yeah, I am in control of my body. And I have the kind of knowledge and ability now to release the trauma that's been built up for like 30 years without having an explanation. So yeah, yoga is a big one for me.
Great. I've never heard of that.
Mm.
Investigate. And you also said you meditate?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I meditate. It's still quite hard for me to meditate, but it's really good for me to tune out of everything that's kind of going on, because my brain and many other neurodivergent people's brains are quite busy with things and with thoughts, and I have this kind of internal like monologue in my head all the time that's not quite helpful. So meditation is great to help keep me grounded and yeah, relaxed.
Mhm. Do you have more strategies?
Gosh, most of my strategies revolve around like physical exercise, but another one I do kickboxing and Muay Thai, and I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and I started doing it around the same time as my diagnosis, but it's really good for yeah, relieving stress and just moving around in my body and building up confidence really as well. And I think a lot of the time we're told as autistic people that we can't really do much and we can't do many things, but we can. And I think kickboxing is such an empowering sport for me and for probably other many autistic people to kind of do, just to feel into our bodies and do something that's fun. And it's a really good way to also just, yeah, tune out, kind of like meditation again, and just hyper focus on your breathing and your body and just what's happening now.
That's what we're good at.
Yes, yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. So, to anyone who's listening, and if you're also on the autism spectrum, I put together all my best strategies in a video course. It's self-paced and you can get it for free. There's a link below the video as well, and you can grab it. It's free, and there's a workbook also, and you can. I also use meditation, EFT tapping, and manifestation techniques. So, and really helps me. All right. Yes, Sophie, it was a great talk today. Would you like to say something to anyone who's watching today?
Yes. Yeah, it was a amazing talk. Like, thank you for having me on. It's been great. As a kind of take-home message, I would say to people who have been newly diagnosed in particular, to not put pressure on yourself to completely embrace your autistic identity, and to kind of, you know, you can embrace it and celebrate it, but also be mindful that it's a really slow process of unmasking yourself and experimenting with what feels wrong or right for you. So take your time and kind of enjoy the journey of just learning about yourself again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great talk, and I hope to talk to you again some other time.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, thank you for having me on. Yeah, you were great. It was great to talk about this.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank
It's
you.
my pleasure. Namaste. Bye, Sophie.
Bye bye.